It's called one of the greatest conquests in history. In 1533, a Spanish soldier named Francisco Pizarro, leading fewer than 200 men, toppled the largest empire the Americas had ever seen. 10 million people. An empire stretching across the spine of a continent. Brought down, the textbooks say, by a couple hundred conquistadors in a matter of months. There's just one problem with that story. Today, around 10 million people still speak the language of the Inca, living across the mountains of Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador right now. So which is it? Did the Inca fall, or are they still here? Because DNA has finally answered that question, and the answer doesn't just rewrite the fall of an empire. It exposes a lie about what actually brought that empire down, who really did the conquering, and why the world was told a great people had been destroyed when they never actually were. This is the story the history books got completely backwards. Here's the version everyone's taught. In 1532, Pizarro marched into the heart of the Inca Empire. Tawantinsuyu, the largest state on earth at the time, captured the emperor Atahualpa, and within a year had seized the capital Cusco. A handful of Europeans, we're told, brought a civilization of millions to its knees. It became the ultimate story of the few conquering the many. But that story hides a number it can't explain. Fewer than 200 men could not, by force, kill or rule 10 million people. And those people didn't vanish. Their descendants number in the millions, and their language, Quechua, is the most widely spoken indigenous language in all of the Americas today. So here's the real question this video is about. If the Inca are still here, still speaking the empire's language, still farming the same mountains, then what actually destroyed the empire? And why were we so eager to hand all the credit to a few hundred soldiers? Hold on to that. Because the very same evidence that proves the Inca survived also reveals what truly brought their empire down. And it wasn't Spanish steel. We'll come back to it, and when we do, it changes the whole story. But first, forget the idea of a primitive people easily conquered. That's the first lie to go. The Inca built the largest and most sophisticated empire in the ancient Americas, and they did it without the wheel, without money, and without a writing system as we'd recognize it. They laced the Andes with a road network stretching some 40,000 kilometers, longer than the Roman roads at their peak. They cut stone so precisely that their earthquake-proof walls still stand after 5 centuries, without a drop of mortar. They recorded vast amounts of information on knotted cords called quipu. They freeze-dried food in the mountain cold to feed the empire through lean years. Their surgeons even performed skull surgery, and their patients survived at rates that would shame parts of the medieval world. This was not a people waiting to be saved. So how does an empire like that fall to 200 men? It didn't. And this is where the DNA delivers the truth the history books buried. Because Pizarro did not conquer a mighty, unified empire. He walked into a corpse of one. And what had gutted it arrived years before he did. An invisible killer that came not with an army, but with the air. Smallpox. It swept south through the Americas faster than the Spanish themselves, leaping from village to village down the trade routes. And sometime around 1527, it reached the Inca. It killed the emperor, Huayna Capac, and it killed his chosen heir, almost certainly within days of each other. In an instant, the most powerful empire on the continent was left with no clear ruler, and it tore itself apart. 2 of Huayna Capac's surviving sons, Atahualpa and Huáscar, plunged the empire into a brutal civil war for the throne. That is the empire Pizarro found. Not a united superpower, a plague-shattered state, its leadership dead, its people exhausted by a war between brothers, and many of its subject nations ready to side with anyone against their Inca rulers. Pizarro didn't topple a giant. He put a knife into something a disease had already brought to its knees. And now the DNA proves what came next. When scientists reconstructed the deep genetic history of the Andes, sequencing ancient DNA spanning thousands of years and comparing it to people living there today, they found a story of remarkable continuity. The populations of the Andes have deep, ancient roots in those mountains. and the modern Quechua and Aymara peoples are the direct genetic descendants of the empire's population. The bloodline of the Inca world didn't end on a battlefield in 1533. It runs, unbroken, straight into 10 million people alive today. If uncovering the truths that history tried to bury is what you're here for, take 1 second and subscribe. That's the entire reason this channel exists. Because now the two halves of this story lock together. Here's what everyone misses. The very thing that destroyed the empire is the reason the people survived. A plague and a civil war can bring down a government in a matter of years, but they don't hunt down every bloodline the way a war of extermination does. The empire, the Tawantinsuyu, was a political structure. When its emperor died and its capital fell, that structure collapsed. But the people underneath it, the farmers, the weavers, the families in 10,000 mountain villages, were never erased. They endured the plague, endured the conquest, and carried everything forward. Their genes, their language, their children. The empire fell precisely because it was a single fragile chain of command. The people survived precisely because they were not. Which reframes the whole story. Pizarro's 200 men were never the conquerors the legend makes them. The real conqueror of the Inca Empire was a microbe that arrived before any European set foot in the capital. But brave soldiers defeat a mighty empire is a far cleaner story than a disease did the work, and the people never actually died. And so for 500 years, the soldiers got the credit, and the 10 million survivors got left out of the story entirely. The irony is almost unbearable. The empire held up as history's most total conquest is, underneath, one of its great survival stories. Quechua, the language the Inca spread across their empire, is spoken by more people today than at many points under Inca rule. The terraces the Inca carved are still farmed. The faces preserved in Andean mummies are the faces you can see in the markets of Cusco right now. The Inca were never conquered out of existence. Their empire was, and the two are not the same thing. And for millions of Peruvian, Bolivian, and Ecuadorian families today, a DNA test that comes back full of deep Andean ancestry isn't a shock, it's a homecoming. It's the grandmother speaking Quechua in the highlands. It's the weaving, the farming, the festivals that outlived the empire by half a millennium. It's the recognition that the fallen civilization never truly fell. It just stopped being an empire and went on being a people. The science simply caught up to what their blood had carried the whole time. Which leaves a question far bigger than one empire. If the most famous conquest in history was really a plague finishing a civil war, and if 10 million descendants of the conquered are alive right now, how many other peoples were declared destroyed by those who only ever wrote down the version that flattered the victors? So tell me, do you carry Inca, Quechua, or Andean ancestry, and did anyone ever tell you your people were conquered and gone? And which nation should we uncover next? Drop it in the comments. Yours might be the next video. And subscribe to find out who we dig up next. There are a lot more buried truths where